Fitzgerald, Division of Unemployment Insurance Director, and Ryan Gedney, Senior Economist with the department. A number of things to update you all on this morning. So just a quick rundown of what we'll be covering. Return to work update on job refusals, a fraud update, an update on the looming expiration of the pandemic unemployment compensation, an update on the trust fund, and our virtual agent solution by Google that will be implemented next week. And we'll actually we'll close our introductory remarks with the other issues aside, other than the call center, and then I will send that over to Jeff to address what we're doing with the virtual agent, and then Ryan's presentation with trust fund update. So let's see real quick. Return to work. We're still trending where we have been in past weeks. So these are refusals to return by employees, and we're still around 17.5%. We've received 3,100, or we have pending 3,100 inquiries in. We've made a decision on 2,700 of those. So again, that number really hasn't varied since the beginning. So still around 17%. Denial of benefits for refusal to return to work. With regard to fraud, we actually track what other states are reporting with regard to the PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Benefit. And that, as you recall, is where we saw a fairly significant hike several weeks ago in those PUA claims. What we're seeing in other states was what we saw for that 1 week period, which is a tremendous hike, an increase in those claims. So we believe that our fraud detection in that space has been effective and is working. And again, just as a reminder, because some of you have asked this week about folks still receiving debit cards when they did not apply for unemployment, we do have 5 steps outlined on our website at coloradoui.gov that somebody should take if they believe they were a victim of identity theft and someone used their identity to file for unemployment. And so we think that we have put adequate, so far, fraud detection and prevention measures in place that are working. Again, largely based on what we're seeing with those PUA claims spiking significantly in other states. Let's see here. So the PUC benefit, which is the Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, $600 a week to every type of unemployment benefit, federal and state, is set to expire July 25th. We are actively in conversations with our congressional delegates on what's being contemplated at the federal level with regard to a potential extension of those benefits, potential reduction and extension of those benefits, and a number of other solutions that they're contemplating. We think that we doubt, from what we're hearing from our staffer friends on the Hill, is that they will actually make a decision before July 25th. And so it is very likely that there will be a gap of some sort in that $600 a week benefit. As soon as we get information on which way Congress might lead, we will certainly report that to the claimant population and to you all. Again, there are a number of solutions they're considering. The easiest for us to administer, quite frankly, certainly would be the current state, which is $600 a week. But it remains to be seen what they'll decide to do with that. Additionally, PUA, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, is set to expire at the end of the year. All indications on a number of these extended benefits is that they will continue past their date of expiration. I'm going to pause there real quick and see if Jeff has anything to add on PUC or anything I've touched on already.
No, I think you covered it fairly well. The only thing I would add is it remains to be seen if there is, in fact, a gap in terms of what Congress looks at. It also would be to be determined if they would, if they implement a solution, if they would make it retroactive to 7/26 to provide a level of continuity. So a lot of those factors are to be determined.
Right. Thank you, Jeff. And again, our intent is that we will communicate to the claimant population, of course, as soon as we hear anything, and likely even advance of any definite action by Congress, because certainly our intent is to over communicate with these issues, because obviously claimants are dependent on these funds and need to prepare. And as soon as we have information, we'll communicate that out as well. Um, I don't know if Andy Kenny's on the Zoom call today, but we did get a couple of inquiries this week on overpayments. This is expected. We saw this during the Great Recession. It is when you have an unprecedented volume of claims, number one. Added on to that, as we saw during this pandemic, a need to quickly administer these benefits to claimants. And then following that administration of benefits, a review of claims to ensure that they were paid properly and with integrity. And so this is what we do with regular unemployment continuously, but certainly we are paying greater attention to it now, the integrity of benefit payments now during the pandemic. So since about mid-March, when we started to see the increase in unemployment claims, we have marched to about today, maybe last week, Jeff can keep me honest, have identified about $17.5 million in overpayments to claimants. This is less than 1% of all benefits paid. And this is attributed to a number of factors. And keep in mind that these claimants have their appeal rights have expired. So anybody that would have an overpayment or an adjudication issue with unemployment has appeal rights. So these claimants have expired their appeal rights. It was determined that they do, in fact, have an overpayment, and we've identified a number of reasons that are attributable to this. Number one is when we're looking at either a reason for separation, information that came out after the separation. So let's say they actually were terminated from a job instead of other conditions of separation that would make them eligible. That would be an instance. Date of separation, backdating of claims. And another thing that we actually expected to see was the PPP loans. Payment protection programs, payroll protection programs, and the intersection of that program with unemployment benefits, which again, we expected to see. It is, again, total 17.5 million, less than 1% of total benefits paid during this time frame. And we do offer repayment options to these claimants. And so we'll continue to report out to you on what we're doing to work with the claimant community, let them know if there is an overpayment, the reasons for the overpayment, and the options available to them. Jeff, anything I missed on that?
I think you covered it well. Just want to underscore one point, and that is that overpayments are a natural byproduct of the system and can happen in any economy. So it's not just related to a high demand on claims. I want to be clear that when we make a determination on benefits, either party, the employee or the employer, has appeal rights. So if we make an initial determination based on the facts of the separation that grants an award for benefits, as an example, an employer could contest that in an appeal, and they could win that appeal. And in that case, the benefits would have to be returned. So I just want to underscore that it's a natural byproduct of the system itself, based upon the fact that all parties have appeal rights on determinations, and so it can happen in an employment situation of 2.4% or the employment situation we have right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Before we get into what direction we're moving with the call center, just checking in to see if there's any questions. I don't see any. So this is one that we update you all on every week, what we're seeing with our call center activity and the volume and the solutions that we're implementing to address the surge in calls coming into the call center. And we're working on a number of things. And I will actually have Jeff update you on the virtual call center virtual agent solution that's being implemented next week. And I just want to emphasize that as we track the reasons that are causing the calls in the first place, again, a number of these, in fact, likely out of the top five, 4, let's say, are items that a claimant can find an answer to through a self-service option online, or through our chatbot function online, or through our how-to video guides. And so we do still endeavor to update our communication strategies and tools so that a claimant can save a call and actually get information that they need online or in a self-service fashion. That said, clearly our data indicates that individuals are still calling into the call center and need that interaction with an agent to resolve an issue. Another thing that we're seeing is that when a claimant uses a self-service option, so uploads a document or any other function through the application, they're calling the call center to confirm the receipt of a document, or just reiterate the response that they received electronically. Again, those are all driving volume into the call center, and our ultimate goal is to not have such a surge of volume that nobody gets through. And I think this virtual agent solution does help us get there. So I am actually going to turn it over to Jeff to kind of go over the plan for implementing this solution and the benefits we think it will bring about.
Okay, thank you, Cher. So we've talked a little bit about this in previous weeks, but with the implementation a week away, we thought we'd get into a little bit more depth on this concept. So it's a partnership that we forged with Google on providing this solution based upon their experience in this area, and it's actually one that's been deployed in other states successfully. And so it's a two-phased project. Phase one will be deployed next week. Specifically on Wednesday is when the full deployment will go into place, but the launch will actually be after close of business on Tuesday. And it's important to note that because the virtual agent system will actually be available 24/7. But what it will entail is deploying a virtual agent. And I should mention that this will be accessible both via telephone as well as via the web on our website. coloradoui.gov. I also think it's important to note that the user experience will actually be superior on the website, just due to the nature that on a call, it's going to have automated responses that are essentially being read to you. So again, hopefully that this would actually drive more traffic to the website because the functionality will be the same on both the phones and the website, but the user experience, in my opinion, will be superior on the website. But what it will entail is a virtual agent being deployed that will be able to navigate a number of self-service options for the customers. So when they call in, it will automatically link them to a virtual agent, which means you will see the claimants will see an elimination of busy signals and the inability to get through to us. So they will connect to the virtual agent, and that will navigate them through a number of self-service options. As we've talked about, really dealing with the total claimant volume really does require marrying technology solutions along with staffing solutions. We cannot simply staff to resolve all of these issues, and it's imperative that part of our strategy is to mitigate the need for any calls to begin with. And so I'll talk about some numbers that we've seen in partnership with Google. And their experience in deploying such solutions here in a minute. But so it will allow them to navigate items like how to file a reopen, how to manage an existing claim, report earnings, word search requirements, and things along those lines. Experience tells us that the virtual agent is 90% accurate in terms of deploying information. So that's an exceptionally high rate in terms of getting the customers what they need in the initial inquiry. Should the customer's needs not be met through the virtual agent, it will then allow them to schedule a callback. So essentially, we'll be moving from an inbound call center to a scheduled callback methodology. And so it will default to first available appointment within our system. If that doesn't work for them, then it will allow the customer to choose other options that might work better to their schedule. And it will schedule them within a 2-hour window on a certain day so that they have time certainty on when they will be able to access a customer service agent via a call back to them. What this does is which is important to me because I feel like this is a superior service model, is it provides them time certainty. It provides equity into all folks being able to access the systems, as you all have heard, no doubt. And as we've talked about, there are instances where customers are trying to reach us for days on end and they are unable to get through. That is because, in essence, at 8 a.m., it's sort of a sprint to get into the system. And in many days, they simply cannot get through to our system and they get constant busy messages. So it provides equity on folks getting in and being able to access our systems. It also provides time certainty on when they'll get their needs met, again, if they cannot get their needs met via self-service. What we have seen based upon other deployments is in phase one, based upon what I've just outlined, about 10 to 30%, and these are probably modest estimates, about 10 to 30% of folks who are attempting to get through to us will get their needs met via the virtual agent. This is supported with details that we provided that in many instances, and as Sherry's detailed, that in many instances, the call ultimately is something they could have gotten to on the website, but they perhaps had challenges navigating it, or perhaps just wanted confirmation of something they already knew or got from the website. Phase two of this will move to a superior level of virtual agent technology. And what we mean by that is phase two of this, which will be deployed in early August, is that the virtual agent will actually tie into our back-end systems. And so once the claimant goes through a verification process to identify that they are in fact the person that has the claim on file, the virtual agent will be able to answer specific questions based upon their particular claim. So it will move from generic FAQs, generic processes, to actually able to look up that unique individual's claim and give them feedback and responses based upon their unique needs and their particular claim. Again, leveraging other deployments, we expect that, and this could be a modest number, but we expect that there could be better resolution in terms of about 30 to 50% of the call volumes being addressed through that need or through that deployment, such that it would mitigate the need for them to get through to us altogether. Again, same system of deployment where if their needs aren't met in phase two of that deployment, they would also go through a model of scheduled callbacks. We certainly anticipate, based upon the current demands, that the schedule will fill up quickly. We saw that in the lobby deployment of in-person, in-lobby services, and that calendar being filled up quickly, even a higher demand for total call volume. So what we expect to see is that the calendar will fill up quickly for folks wanting to speak with an agent via callback. But that will, once we get through a certain backlog, based upon the fact that we have a high number of claimants that are in the system right now, but as Ryan will talk about in a moment, new claims are declining. So that system will, once we work through the backlog, we expect the number of weeks that were booked out to start to decline. But we absolutely will need to work through a backlog. And so you should expect to see, we will expect to see us scheduled out for a number of weeks. We still feel like that's a far superior option in terms of, again, equity and time certainty on getting service as compared to the current model, which is why we're excited about this and looking forward to its deployment. I should mention, I should have said this at the onset, our pandemic unemployment assistance call center will not shift to this model. We have what we feel like are reasonable time wait times and reasonable service models for pandemic unemployment assistance specifically. So we will not be deploying this for those needs. That call center will still stay in place, and that will retain the model that's in place right now. So I think I've covered a lot of information. Happy to answer questions on that. But Cher, I think that's about the extent of the overview.
Yeah, and before we get to questions, again, I think the solution to addressing this unprecedented demand for help with unemployment is multi-pronged and multifaceted. And it's actually not just within one medium, but rather a mix of solutions, which we feel we have implemented since we started to see this surge in claims during the beginning of the pandemic. And this latest solution with Google is just another example of us overlaying on top of the solutions we've already implemented to hopefully address the ongoing need for support. We did see a decrease in the number of calls that are going unanswered, and that's positive news, although there's still obviously a number of people who still are unable to get their questions resolved, and many of you hear from them. And so as Jeff said, we do think this is a solution that will provide some relief. And it will change our model, and it is being done in other states. It's more focused and concentrated on committed service rather than having a claimant just hope that they get through on any given day and talk to somebody. So with that,
Sure. Would you like me to address the two questions that are in the chat box?
Sure.
Okay, so starting with the second one first, will people who call in have an option to talk to a virtual agent, or will it be automatic? Yeah, once they get in, it will automatically pop up with a virtual agent. So it won't be press one to talk to a virtual agent. It'll auto route them to that. A little bit off topic, but does the has the department eased the work search requirements as cases are climbing? So we've addressed this in previous meetings, and so what we have in place right now, and again, this is based upon where the economy stands right now, where we are with regards to the governor's declarations in terms of the overall state of affairs and the phases that he has declared, as well as some local things along those lines as well. But we are seeing a decreases in terms of the new claims. We are seeing a level of activity of new jobs that are being opened up, and a demand for folks returning to work. So what we've actually put in place is that we have our normal work search expectations are in place. We took steps years ago actually to broaden the work search expectations to include not just job search activities in terms of applying for jobs and interviewing and things along those lines, but we've also included things like skill building, working with the Workforce Center to augment skills, learnings, networking, things along those lines. So recognizing that there may be individuals who are unable to go return to work right now due to they may be more prone or susceptible to COVID-19 due to underlying circumstances. There are still activities that we feel that they can perform right now to augment their skills to make themselves more marketable, so that when they are able to return, they have a better leg up in terms of getting a job. So that's where we stand with regards to work search. Um, do we know how many calls are coming in that are still go unanswered? So roughly, these are rough numbers, and I'm going to include inbound calls answered as well as callbacks. Roughly, we're getting about 12,000 unique calls per day into our call center. That's both on the PUA and the regular unemployment. We're answering or doing callbacks to about 4,000 of those calls per day. So there's still a gap there. And again, those are averages. That's not necessarily the number every single day, but those are averages across the week. And as I talked about earlier, once we shift to this model, that demand for time slots will be significant, and we will work through that. But as we work through that gap, the demand and the time slots in terms of number of weeks that were scheduled out will continue to decline. Chair, would you like me to keep going, or do you want to turn to a different topic?
No, we just have one last question about work search, which I think you did already address, but if it's specifically with regard to PUA, there is guidance on our website that we've put out on what is required for PUA claimants. Again, these are self-employed gig workers and independent contractors. We do work closely with our workforce centers, and we have heard that they are also getting questions on work search requirements. And the best resource for this is, again, the website where we've published guidance. PUA recipients do, in fact, need to conduct a valid work search, just like regular UI claimants do. With regard to vulnerable populations, again, I think Jeff covered this earlier. So unless there's any question unanswered, we can kick it over to Ryan and then circle back if anybody has any follow-ups.
Thanks, Cher. As always, let's start off with the most recent initial claims data. Again, this most recent data is for the week ending July 4th. The state processed 7,854 regular UI initial claims for the week ending July 4th. That's marking the fourth straight week of steady declines in regular UI initial claims. Additionally, 5,900 PUA initial claims were filed last week, bringing the total number of initial claims for the week of July 4th to 13,754. 245,064 regular UI continued claims were registered for the week ending June 27th, while for the week prior, there were 236,376. That is the first time Since late April, there were 2 consecutive weeks with continued claims below 250,000. I think it's also possible that the number of continued weeks for the week ending July 4th will also fall below 250,000. So that's showing also just a very slight possible gradual decline in those continued claim numbers as well, which is positive. The number of PUA continued claims for the week of the 27th totaled 101,348. The department paid out 83.6 million in regular UI benefits for the week of July 4th. Weekly regular UI benefit payments have now fallen below 85 million for 2 consecutive weeks. On a monthly basis, nearly 418 million in regular UI benefits were paid out in the month of June. That is a record for monthly payments for regular UI in a single month. That's compared to 373 million in May and 315 million in April. As we detailed in today's press release, over 1.1 billion in regular UI benefits have been paid out since the end of March. Since the programs were launched on April 20th, a total of 373 million in pandemic unemployment assistance benefits have been paid out, along with nearly 1.8 billion in federal pandemic unemployment compensation. Year to date, so that includes activity prior to the outbreak of COVID-19, nearly 3.4 billion in total UI payments have been distributed to Coloradans in 2020. For comparison, a total of 2.2 billion in UI payments were paid out in 2010 at the height of the Great Recession. The department estimates that 376,058 Coloradans received a UI payment in June, and that's any type of UI payment from any program. That includes 278,286 individuals who received benefits through regular UI and 97,221 who were paid through the PUA program. Over 500,000 Coloradans have received some kind of UI payment during some part of 2020. And since we are discussing benefits, I would like to provide a quick update on the status of the UI Trust Fund. At this time, the trust fund has a balance roughly between 325 and 350 million. We anticipate that over the next month, the trust fund will add between 100 million and 120 million from second quarter employer contributions. Using that information, along with the assumption that future regular UI benefit amounts average around 85 million per week, would indicate trust fund insolvency in mid to late August. And that timeline would change if weekly benefit amounts varied from the 85 million assumption. Finally, when the trust fund does go insolvent, claimants will not see an interruption in their benefit payments. Unemployment benefits will continue to be paid through loans from the Federal Unemployment Account, or FUA. These loans are available from the federal government at 0% interest through the remainder of the calendar year. FUA advances were utilized in the early 1980s and during the Great Recession to pay benefits, and the department has never failed to make payments to UI recipients. At present, 8 states and the Virgin Islands are currently borrowing from FUA. And with that, I could take questions or kick it over to Cher, as I don't see any currently in the chat.
Any questions? This one is probably for Jeff. Eliminating the 4-week closure on claims, or I'm not sure, Aldo, what the 4-week closure on claims is. Jeff?
I'm at a loss what that means as well.
Aldo, we can give you a call afterward. Ryan, are you tracking this?
No, Aldo, if you could maybe provide a little more detail, but yeah, I'm not sure at this point.
You've stumped the panel, Aldo, but we are happy to have a conversation after the call. Okay. Well, we have somebody in our call center who's offered to help answer the question. Why don't we will, Aldo, get back with you on that one after the call. But it does kind of lend itself to, I guess, I'm assuming, I don't know if you mean refile or reopen, but, and I see Jeff nodding. So
I think that's what it means. Yeah.
I think you mean reopen. And so certainly somebody, the program is developed such that you can report earnings or hours worked in any given week up to what's allowed within statute, which is 32 hours, and still receive a partial unemployment benefit amount. So if somebody is finding themselves in a job attached state, let's say, or a furloughed state where you're furloughed a week and then you return to a week, you can still have a claim on file with us, but to that point you would reopen it if it does go past the that period. Jeff, did I answer that correctly? Anything to add on that?
Yeah, now that I better understand the question, yes, I think you did a good job in answering that. And what I would say in general is I need to give it perhaps more thought, but I think the parameters that are in place right now are the ones we will likely stick with. Fact of the matter is that to eliminate that sort of some known variables in terms of that 4-week period would require some significant reprogramming of systems that might be a little bit self-defeating in terms of the overall scheme of what we're trying to accomplish from a technology standpoint.
Any other questions? Just to kind of go back over the timeline for next week's virtual call center virtual agent tool. So the plan is to integrate the solution on the 14th, which is Tuesday at the close of business. It's a 24/7 solution. And as Jeff mentioned, we do expect that it will quickly fill up in terms of requests for callbacks. The other thing to note just quickly for next week before I forget is we won't have a Thursday press call because we are releasing June employment situation numbers on Friday the 17th, and we'll have a press call on Friday at 10 a.m. And I think with that, see no other follow-ups. You know how to find us if you do think of any follow-up questions. If I do owe you any other additional details on questions submitted earlier this week, I will be sending those to you this afternoon. You'll get a recording of this later today. And again, just to, Ryan is chatting me privately, which is really distracting, that just employment situation will come out next Friday at 8 a.m. with a press call at 10 a.m. And LMI Gateway is always a valuable resource for all of this data that we're sharing. So with that, we will conclude this call and talk to you soon. Have a great weekend. Thank you.